third world that is also a question mark. For example, Mexico. Mexico today is considered still part of the third world, but the Mexican economy has really developed a lot. Then there are some countries which are part of this first world, but generally not always seen as the first world. For example, Turkey. You can see Turkey here, right in the middle. That used to be also not very well developed economy. So since the 1990s, they have kind of developed. But before that, they were very underdeveloped as an economy. Even today, Turkey, there are a lot of things in terms of GDP, in terms of economy, they're not really part of the first world. However, they're generally put into the first world because they were aligned with the US and UK, France, Germany, Italy as part of NATO, right? And all these countries you see in red, they used to be aligned all together as part of the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union, and along with the Warsaw Pact, were considered the second world, right? The other, that was the enemy of the West. Western countries are shown in yellow, okay? Now, there's a very interesting thing. Most people don't know this, but this map that I'm showing you is actually a wrong map. Everybody in the world knows that this is the world map, right? However, it's actually not a true representation of the size of these countries. So I'm just going to quickly show you something very interesting. Okay, just give me 1 second. So let me share that again. Yes. So I'm going to show you something very interesting. If you go on Google and you type real world map, just try that sometime and you will see a bunch of different other maps. So let's go to images and see some of these other maps, right? This is what you often see, but this is actually what it is in terms of real size. Okay, so I'm just going to open new tab. Okay. So this is actually in terms of the real size of these countries, okay? So you can see that Africa is really gigantic, right? Indonesia is much bigger than in the other map, right? India, Bangladesh, all these countries are bigger. Australia is much smaller than it shows in the other map, which is shown in the entire world today as the world map, right? But in terms of physical area, that map is actually wrong. This is actually the physical size of the map. The reason that we don't see that this map is because because of politics, because the Western countries want to show themselves as bigger. So we get more impressed with them, right? And secondly, because the map that is popular today and taught is actually a map used during the time when there were wooden boats, like wooden ships, right? And they used to use that as a navigation map of the world, okay? So it was good for navigation purposes, okay? But not in terms of physical size, okay? This is a true representation of the physical size, okay? However, it's not a perfect representation. There are many other representations. But generally, this is in terms of physical square kilometers, right? Rather than showing one thing as small and one thing as big. I don't know, have you ever used fisheye in your mobile, so in your smartphone? You'll see that everything is distorted, right? So this is the kind of the undistorted map. So you can see that the third world is actually gigantic, okay? The developing countries are very big, and Europe is very tiny, okay? A big part of Europe can just fit into one of Indonesia's islands, okay, right? UK, USA, UK is barely visible. It's tiny island here. That's the island, right? That's a representation, okay? And it's good to actually know. Sorry, go ahead, Andy. No, who was that? No, okay. All right. So it's a good idea to actually know the world in terms of its physical size, so you actually understand what the reality of the world is. Because most people, when from a young childhood, they grow up seeing a map which is actually a distorted map, which is showing something much bigger, which is actually physically much smaller. Okay. And that is because most of these countries, third world countries, were colonized by foreign countries, right? The Indian subcontinent was colonized by the British, right? Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch. And Vietnam was, for example, colonized by France. And even China, big parts of China was colonized by different parts of the Western world, right? So let's go back to the presentation. Right. Right. Okay. So let's start with the different terms here. Okay. So research, what do we mean by that? So this is kind of the Oxford definition of research. The systemic investigation into the study of materials, sources, in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Okay. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to study materials and gather knowledge that will be able to create new knowledge, right? And bring you to new conclusions that will be useful for the world. Okay. So for example, if somebody is in a company and in that company, they're seeing that their sales is going down. They don't know why it's going down. Okay. But it's going down. So now they find an investigator or a researcher, and that person will go and try to research why is it going down? Maybe he will do a consumer survey, right? Consumer survey to find out why people are not buying this product, why they're not going to that restaurant, why they're not wanting that service, right? Okay, so all right. Now, knowledge is what we believe to be true or correct understanding of something. So that is what knowledge is, right? It's what we believe to be true or correct. So all this time, all these people in the third world, they believed that this map was correct, right? And it showed the real representation of the world. But it was actually not true, okay? So in that sense, knowledge is something that we are always kind of struggling with, right? Everything, even in physics, which is a very hard science, things change. In biology, things change. Theories that were originally accepted are not accepted anymore. For example, in physics, atom was considered to be the smallest part, you know, the smallest part. But today we don't know that, no, there are something called quarks and beyond that, right? So science itself is constantly changing. You know? So facts, there are facts, of course. We can get facts. They're just data. Without a meaningful interpretation of those facts, you will not have knowledge. Okay. So knowledge is not just facts, but it is the organization of facts in a meaningful way that is useful. All right, so business research. Why do business research? What is the purpose of business research? Okay, so to guide business decisions, right? So you have various business decisions that you make, right? As I said, was giving an example. Why is the sales of this company going down? How can we innovate something? How can we make something better, right? Tesla, which is a very innovative company and one of the fastest and the largest now, one of the largest capitalized companies in the world. It did not exist just 20 years ago, right? Yes, 22 years ago, it did not even exist. But today it's one of the largest companies, And it is also one of the most innovative companies. They're always doing research, which is also not just random research, because we do a lot of research in the third world as well, right? But that research is often not very useful. It's just not designed to, not done for the purpose of really bringing something new to the world or being something useful to the world. Often it is just people doing their PhDs, right? And they just need to do some research. They need to do a thesis, and they try to cobble together something that will just pass the thesis, but it doesn't often have an impact in the world. Reduce risk of business decisions. When we do research, we're trying to reduce the risks of doing business. For example, if I want to develop like which Tesla is trying to do, a car factory in Indonesia. Now they have to research many things about the market in Indonesia, about the labor laws in Indonesia, the laws in India, the taxation in Indonesia, the political stability of Indonesia, the environmental conditions, earthquakes, or any other problems that they might face. The amount of technical knowledge that the students or the employees have, the workers have. If they do not have enough technical knowledge, they will not, Tesla's factory will not be successful. The suppliers, the culture, what kind of work ethic do people have? Are they very hardworking? Are they efficient? So on and so forth. So before making any business decision, you need to have some knowledge about business research and do some business research about that subject and come up with solutions. To get a research degree, yes, that's something we, of course, do. If you're doing a PhD, you have to do research. Or sometimes in some master's degrees, even there is a thesis that you have to do, right? And that might try to bring something new into the world in terms of what happened or how something can be better, how knowledge can be organized better. Business research is done, and research is done to solve problems, right? And in business research, we talk about efficiency of a business, efficiency and competitiveness. So if you want to maintain your business competitiveness, you have to constantly do research, at least in the third world, sorry, in the first world. And in the third world, it's a more difficult thing for doing research for competitiveness, because a lot of companies do not actually do meaningful research. All right. Intellectual joy, happiness, like happiness that comes from finding something new, solving a problem, understanding, knowing, right? So when you were young, when we were all young, when we were children, we loved to know about everything. We love to take a toy, bite it, throw it, find out how to break it. We try to look at the sand, play with water, play with sand, play with things, run around, fall down, see what happens, right? We were intellectually curious. However, that curiosity somehow decreases with time. And eventually, we are not curious about anything. We, in fact, don't even want to know about things that will not directly and immediately benefit us, right? But intellectual joy is actually what drives research in the first world to a great extent. The best inventions in the world come from people who get joy out of inventing new things. Business research can help society, it can help your nation, it can help tribes. So that is another reason why people do business research. The United States government spends a lot of money doing research, including various kinds of research, which will help the United States become a strong and powerful country, right? Many countries, including Singapore, have done, and people there have done research on business research just to figure out how can we develop innovation in Indonesia, say, or in innovation in Singapore. And Singapore wanted to become more innovative. And there was even a research on figuring out why there is not as much research in Singapore as there is in, say, America, right? And they were trying to figure out what in, say, California, how do people live, think, work? What kind of mindset do they have that there is so much innovation there, and why that is missing in Singapore? All right, let's go to the next thing. Right. Okay, developed countries versus third world countries. Okay, so in the developed world, a lot of things happen which do not happen in the same way in the developing world, right? So if we see West Germany, which was not united at the time in the 1948, 45, Germany was divided, right? And West Germany was completely destroyed. The whole of Germany was completely destroyed in World War II. Everything they had, their industries were destroyed. If they were not destroyed, the Allied forces that won, they physically took the factories and took it to their own countries. Okay, and the West Germany was totally destroyed in terms of not only infrastructure and capital, but also in terms of labor. Lots of millions of Germans were killed. And those that were good engineers or scientists, they were taken by the Allies, sometimes by force. By the Soviet Union, they were taken by force. And by the Western countries, they were taken by incentives that, okay, we'll give you a better life, we'll give you money, you work for us in our country, come and move to the USA, or to other countries. Okay. And so Germany neither had that many engineers left or scientists left, or they had infrastructure. But within 15 years, from zero, they again developed their economy. Within 15, not 50, 15 years, they again became one of the top economies in the world. And of course, the US tried to help them. They gave them some money. And the Germans, they kind of tried to collect their own money to invest. So they invested about 45 Deutschmarks, their currency, per person in 1948. But within 15 years, they were one of the top economies in the world. So that is development. And of course, there's a lot of research that went into that, a lot of innovation, a lot of work that went into that. Now, compare this with Indonesia or a country like Bangladesh, my country, or even, Pakistan or India or African countries or Papua New Guinea or all these other countries. They have so many resources. Germany doesn't have that many resources. They don't have natural resources. They don't have oil. They don't have a lot of things. But we are, for last 70 plus years, we are independent, but we cannot develop our economy. And in fact, we have spent more money individually. Indonesia has spent more money on trying to develop themselves than Germany in those 15 years. And Bangladesh has spent more money. India has spent more money. Pakistan has spent more money. All these countries, we are spending money, throwing money, but we cannot develop our economies. We cannot come up with new researches, new innovations that will make our economy competitive, or new ways of doing things, new businesses. Somehow we are not able to do that. So this is something very interesting, right? And something that we should all be really interested in, and we should all study to some extent, right? So so that's what we are kind of talking about, and which is kind of the big problem with the third world, right? We are throwing money, but we cannot develop ourselves. What is wrong? What is wrong with us? Right? Well, anyways, let's go forward. Innovation. The practice of turning cutting-edge basic research and inventions with real-world applications is it's the driver of knowledge economies. So you need innovation, right? If you want to develop your economies, and you need research, various kinds of research, including business research, to innovate, And a part of this answer is that research has to be linked to things being done in the business world or things being done with the industries. Because if research is not connected with that, if it is just a journal article or a book, then it is just a piece of paper. And how many people will read it? Okay, maybe a handful of people will read it. And even if 1,000 people read it, if nothing happened, if no improvement happened, if it was not applied to industry, then to businesses, then it is useless, okay, for the economy. So that's another problem, because there is no linkage of research in the third world, generally, not good linkages between research and development in business or in industry or in technology. If innovation stagnates, that is bad for the economy. And that's one of the reasons that there is this problem. So let's look at the current research levels and innovation levels in the world. This is showing you the current research and innovation levels. Right, okay. All right, so this is kind of showing you the top 20 innovative countries in the world. So this is where all the research is happening today: China, USA, Germany, UK, Japan, France, South Korea, Canada, Switzerland. After that, there is one really a true third world country today, which is India. But it's a gigantic country, 1.5 billion people, right? And in 1.5 billion people, it's not even doing as much research as Switzerland. Okay. So you can see, again, in all of these countries, so many countries, so small countries: Israel, very tiny country; Sweden, very tiny country; Netherlands, very tiny country. But there is no Bangladesh, there is no Indonesia, there is no Pakistan, there is no African countries which are so big. Nigeria has 200 million people. We are not doing enough research to cause innovation. We're just not doing enough. So why this backwardness? Okay. So let us consider some of the reasons that could be possible why there is this backwardness. Okay, lack of research culture. So you have a culture that wants to innovate, and that culture is engendered by various things, right? So for example, that culture can be part of how people grow up, how people think of the world, what they see other people do, what they think is acceptable, how their mind works. So when I was in America, for instance, I saw that even in high school level, people are doing projects, and people in the developing world, in the third world, will not even do in the PhD level. So it's not that they have more knowledge, but it's not that they have more information. It's just that they do a lot more of the real research, which is innovating new things, rather than, okay, say I want just write a paper and I will pass my PhD and that's it. Or I will write a paper in journal article and they get a promotion from lecturer to assistant professor. Okay, that we don't want. That that is the kind of research that does not help really. It just helps that individual, but it doesn't help that country. Okay, so these are some of the things we're going to talk about as we go forward. Level of civilization, world of, we're going to get into more of that later. World of ideas, people, objects, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, corruption, law, lack of rule of law, colonized mindset. Remember, our minds are different than people in the first world, or people in other parts of the world. Because we have been colonized by other countries, and for a long time, maybe 100 years, in some cases 150 years, some cases 200 years, we were ruled by other people. And because of that, we have certain problems with our mind in terms of what we can think, in real terms, in terms of our culture, in terms of how we interact with each other, and what we cannot. Yes, we can fix them maybe, but those things are there. Dysfunctional education. How effective is our education in solving the problems that we face? In my country, Bangladesh, I can tell you that I have taught BBA and MBA programs for the last 4 years, for more than 4 years. And I saw that many of the BBA students who graduate, many of the master's students who graduate, they cannot, if I tell them, if I give them a piece of paper and say, write me 2 paragraphs about a certain topic, they will not be able to do it. Their skills are not good enough to do. They just know how to copy things and paste them and then print them out and give you as your assignment. Okay, right? But they cannot. They don't. They don't. They're not able to actually use their mind and come up with just basic ideas and write something about any topic. Their skill is not there. And why is that not there? Okay, why is it that we are spending 30 years of our lives, 20 years of our lives, 25 years of our lives studying, and at the end, most of it is useless. How many people remember your maths, your trigonometry from school? Has it ever helped you in your life? Has it ever been useful for you? How many of the courses you've ever done in your life do you still remember, or do you utilize? So that's a big problem as well. So let's start with some of these points, okay? A lack of research culture, okay? So a lack of research culture. There's a culture that wants to innovate new things, that wants to come up with new solutions. And remember, as children, when we were young, we had that culture. Every child is born wanting to know about the world, wanting to find out things, want to break things and see how they can change it. But somehow our culture, it tells us, don't do it. Don't break that. Don't do that. Don't go on that trip. Andino once fell down and hurt his knee. I hope his knee is better now. And so he tried to do something new, right? Something he didn't do before. And of course, with that, there's a learning process. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to get hurt, then you're going to get up, and then you're going to learn, okay, this is how to do it, right? And that is an integral part of research. But that tolerance for making those mistakes might be low in these cultures, right? So there are various things in the culture which stop you from doing research, thinking differently. Some cultures, they don't want you to think differently than how everybody thinks. That is harmful for research. Okay. Let's look at another aspect, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What is Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It is a motivation theory that shows what motivates people. When a person is very poor, he is just focused on getting air, water, food, shelter, clothing. When he has little more money, he wants safety, right? He wants employment. He wants various things like that, right? Then when he gets that, he wants friendship, love, family, right? Then he wants respect. And when he has all of these things, then he thinks about why am I alive? And what am I supposed to do in the world? How do I make this world better, right? Now, most people in the third world and the developing world are kind of stuck in these lower segments, right? Most people who even do supposed research in these countries, they do it because, okay, I have a job. My job is to do research, or okay, I have a PhD. I need to get a PhD. I want to do research and write a paper, even if it's a rubbish paper. That's not going to help the world. And many of the facts are not even true, or many of the research has not actually been done, right? It's just they have made up the research themselves. Right? If there's been a bunch of surveys that need to be done, they just made their friends and themselves fill out those surveys. These things happen, right? Especially in the third world. And so they're just doing it to help themselves, right? But they're not trying to say, hey, how can I make the world better? What is the purpose of my life? Let me come up with something new. That is, they have not reached self-actualization. At best, they have reached, they want, okay, safety, they want a job, Then they want, okay, to get married, love and belonging. And then, yes, the people will say, yes, I'm a professor, people respect me, right? That is something that they want. Or that, yes, I'm a CEO of a company and people respect me. But beyond developing that part, they never, most people in the third world often never reach self-actualization, where they say, hey, okay, I have all of these things, but how can I make a contribution to the world that will be meaningful? Okay. All right. So another problem is corruption, lack of rule of law. And so often there is, in the third world countries, there is a lot of corruption, and there is also a lack of rule of law. So when there is these problems, you cannot be motivated enough to reach self-actualization. You're already stuck in all these other things. Okay, safety needs, physiological needs, love and belonging needs, all these things, you're stuck there because there's too much corruption. For example, if you are at a university in Bangladesh, what might happen is that if you're doing too much, too good, you're doing too many things, you're coming up with new research, you're coming up with new webinars, right? And then what might happen is the other faculty members might get jealous. They might get upset that, hey, this guy is progressing too much. So then they will play lots of corruption things, right? They'll play lots of politics to pull you down. Okay. So this is something that happens a lot in the third world. People are always busy pulling each other down because the rules are not very strong. And people often get to their position because they know X, Y, or Z. It's not because they are the most qualified person for the job. Okay. So when you are not the most qualified person for the job, say in a business or in whatever, in an engineering company, then if somebody is actually qualified, he's going to make you look bad. He's going to always be doing the right things. And that means you have to press him down, you have to suppress him, you have to get rid of him if possible. If not, you have to suppress him. So this creates an automatic culture where the corruption and lack of rule of law doesn't allow innovation, doesn't allow the people who are best to rise up. You have to keep them down. Okay. All right. So dysfunctional education is another reason for a lack of research culture. Okay. But we're going to talk about that a little ahead in the next few slides. And colonized mindset, again, we're going to talk about this as we go forward. Okay. But these are also reasons why we lack a research culture. So, yes, so we have a mindset. For example, for a long time in the countries that were colonized, there was a foreign power that was controlling them. And people were very poor because a lot of their resources were stolen. Like, for example, my country, Bangladesh, Bengal, which used to be called Bengal, and was much bigger than it is today. And it was one of the top economies of the world. We had a higher standard of living than Europe, right? At that time, before we were colonized. Right? In fact, one of the historians, Poole, he says that our capital at that time, called Murshidabad, right, was more developed than London of that time. Right? But so because of colonization, they robbed our economies. The third world countries were robbed, and we became poor. We became focused on other things, right? And we also became very depressed psychologically as people. Like, so if somebody tried to come up with something new, it's like the general mindset is, well, if it has not been done before, it's not going to be possible. This kind of a mindset was developed during this struggling period where we were desperate, we were poor, we were, as a nation, we were not strong, and we were always looking down upon ourselves and looking up at the colonizing power. We were like, they are so powerful, they are how we should be, they are the right people, right? So that it kind of got ingrained into our minds, and it's still ingrained. According to Ibn Khaldun, in his book Al-Muqaddimah, he says this mindset does not break even after the physical removal of colonization. You get physical independence, but your mind is still colonized. So according to him, it needs 40 years more after colonization to see the beginnings of the breakdown of mental colonization. However, let's go forward. So the colonized mindset, what does it bring us to? Everything is seen from the lens of what the West does. If the West builds universities, we will build universities. If the West builds MBA programs, we will also have MBA programs. If the West has IT, PhD in IT, or master's program in IT, we will also do that. And we'll try to make it as same as we can superficially make it, right? But how about the culture? How about the inside, how the mind works? That is not visible. So we are not changing those things. We are just doing the physical thing. I'm wearing this suit, which is a Western clothing. And that is, in my country, we must wear this if we are to be seen as a professor or as a lecturer or as somebody respectable or honorable in that society. But clothes do not have a meaningful connection with respect or honor in society, right? I could be wearing a t-shirt and talking to you about the same thing, and you would be getting the same message, right? But these kind of mindsets, this colonized mindset, it kind of gets ingrained into us. Now, we kind of, in our subconscious mind, believe that what the West does must be what makes them great. So if we see them that, yes, they have MBA programs, we get MBA programs, we'll become like them. But actually, the truth is much more complex than that. Having an MBA program may not actually develop our country. It may, in some cases, harm the development of our country. But we are not looking at the problem from a logical perspective. We're not from a research perspective, from seeing how we can solve this problem. We are looking at it at the problem of, he has it, I want one. Right? And we'll get into that as we go forward. Now, example of International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, right? It is a university I spent 1 year in, and I was doing a PhD in economics at that time there. And one of the things I found was that the people who were trying to do economics there, they were using, we want to make it Islamic, we want to make it Malaysian, but they were basically taking the curriculums they taught from the West and just trying to change little names here, write halal there, add, zakat there. But it was like a cheap copy of Western economics. And so after 1 year of doing that, I said, hey, I'm wasting my time here, but these people are crazy, right? But hey, that's what happened. So, and you can see that they spent a lot of money developing this university. It looks beautiful campus. If you ever go to IIUM, it's a campus like you would see in a developed country, right? But they have this campus, they have all these professors, but that mindset is not there. That mindset is all wrong. So all this university, and I'm like getting bored and sitting in a lecture, watching some professor, he's just reading slides from a PowerPoint slide. And he's just literally reading it. Everything is seen from the lens of what the West does. It's not education. It's just a waste of your time, really. And unfortunately, most universities in the third world are wastes of your time in most of the programs that exist today, especially in my country, Bangladesh. As I told you, a master's degree student, many master's degree students cannot write in English 1 page explaining what is going on, any topic, so that is a big problem. Okay, I have 5 more minutes, so I'll go forward. Lack of logic, predominance of ideology, and demagogues. Okay, so there's a lack of logic. We're not trying to solve problems from a research perspective, from, hey, how can we rationalize this? What is logical? What is scientific? We're trying to see everything from the perspective of ideology. Yes, so and so said it, it must be true. Okay, and demagogues. We have demagogues like in countries. Let me give you the example of in Pakistan. Pakistan, there was a leader called Bhutto, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and then he got hanged. And then after that, their party just elected his daughter. He had a daughter, and that became the leader. Now that Benazir died, and now who became the leader? Her son became the leader of this party. That is how politics works in the developing world, in the third world. Generally, in my country, in many countries, it's not that, okay, who is the best person to bring us to help our economy become better, our society become better. It is, okay, he is so and so's son, we have to vote for him or her. Okay, right? So this is a mindset. It's not a rational mindset. It's not a logical mindset. It is a political, ideological mindset that focuses on things that are not rational or logical. Okay, so level of civilization. Okay, there are actually three levels of civilization. If you go to a very primitive tribe in Africa, in a third world in Africa, or near Indonesia, if you go to Papua New Guinea, I've lived in Papua New Guinea, I've worked in the highlands, in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and there you will see tribes. If you go and talk to them, they're mainly focused on getting objects. I want food for today. I want to go and hunt an animal. And okay, look at my spear, look at my bow and arrow, look at the beautiful watch I'm wearing, look at the objects. Their life is focused on objects, getting objects and talking about objects. And then if you go to the next level of society, you say, go to Bangladesh, go to a village in Bangladesh, and everybody is talking about people. Okay, look, he is a great man. He owns a big piece of land. He's very respectable. Everybody respects him. He feeds a lot of people. Everybody is talking about other people. Oh, did you hear? She is so doing this. Oh my God, do you know he is hanging out with her? So people are talking about other people all the time, right? That is kind of their level of their civilization. And then there is a higher level of civilization. If you go to, say, California in America, and you have coffee, you're having coffee there, and you can find people are just talking about ideas. Hey, how about this? Yeah, that is a good way to do it. I once spent 3 hours talking to a guy in a coffee shop in America about a topic, and we spent 3 hours talking about it. We were not talking about here who another person or another object. We were talking about ideas. So we have the world of objects, the world of people, then we have the world of ideas. Research happens in the world of ideas. And when there are not enough people in a country who are in the world of ideas, that country cannot develop. Research cannot happen. Business research cannot happen. Okay. All right. Present state of civilization. Where are we headed? The world is changing constantly, but we are not changing fast enough. So according to Alvin Toffler, he has written multiple books. One of them is called The Third Wave. And in this book and his books, he talks about 3 waves that civilization has gone through. And now we're in the 3rd wave. And with each wave, the world completely changed. Okay. When the agricultural revolution came, before that, people were hunter-gatherers. That world changed totally. All the people who were hunter-gatherers, most of them were died or had to move to becoming part of this new civilization. And languages changed, clothing changed, human organization changed, cities changed, everything changed. Then the industrial revolution came. Again, many of these third world countries became colonized by the Western powers, and they used these industries to do that. And entire continents were wiped out. The South American genetics has completely been destroyed. It's all imported now from Europe. People, the Native Americans were also killed, right? Most of them were killed. 100 million of them died, 100 million. And they were replaced by colonizers. White people came, colonized, took their country, right? So all of this happened because there was an industrial revolution. They had things, they had guns that the people of the previous wave didn't have. Now we are in a 3rd wave, the IT revolution. And if you are not understanding the information technology revolution, if countries lag behind, they will also get ruined, you know. And this wave will completely change how things happened. It'll change everything that we know about the world. It will change the economies, the language, the politics, the laws. Everything is changing, is now shifting. And if we in the third world are not able to understand this change, we will become like the Native Americans, right? We will become a footnote in history. I'm sorry, I'll just take 5 more minutes, okay? Innovation in, okay, right. So I'll just go ahead. Right, so I'll just talk a little bit about this. Dysfunctional education. So an education system that you know today is actually something that we imported, right? The universities that we talk about, we kind of try to copy Western countries. And the Western country education system really began with in a country called Prussia, right? Which is today part of Germany, right? But Prussia was bigger than Germany. It included many other parts. But so Prussia, this concept of mass schooling began, and that was an education system that was designed for the Industrial Revolution. It was designed for taking people who were in an agricultural society and training them to always be in a room and work all the time, obey orders, commands, right? So this system was designed for the Industrial Revolution. However, it is not particularly suitable for the IT revolution because it is not designed from the ground up for the IT revolution. Okay. Anyways, I think I've run out of time here. So that's some of these things I would have liked to talk about, but let's just say that that's all for now. Thank you very much for having me. That's my email if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hussein, for such an amazing informative session with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will move to the next session regarding to the Q&A session. But before that, I will read a brief of the conclusion. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead again. I didn't hear you.
Okay, I will read the conclusion of this presentation from Dr. Hussein.
Sure.
A problem with research in the third world relates to the colonized mindset of the first world countries and promising opportunity for research in the first world country. The backwardness relates to the culture, civilization, mindset of the people in the third world. Okay, to the next session, I will open the Q&A session. For all the participants, if you want to ask question, please raise your hand and open your camera. Is there any question? I will invite all the participants who want to ask the question. You can raise your hand or put the question in the chat box below. Okay, we have first participant to ask the question, Miss Wan Gumanti. So, Bapak Miss Wan Gumanti, please open your camera and ask the question. Pak Miss Wan Gumanti, the floor is yours. Still mute, Pak Miswan.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ibu Nabila, and thank you to Mr. Minhaj. Nice to see you. And we have heard a lot of things what you have explained about the third country. And I agree with you what you have mentioned in the beginnings, the whole of your presentations. And maybe corruption is the most important things makes our country, such as Indonesia, for the third country, having lower innovations, as you just give for the beginning of your statistical data. And the other things, maybe not only about the corruption, so maybe because like Bangladesh, it could be because our country has the fertile lands. It could be. So most of them is becomes. Most of them is just prefer being doing the because Indonesia is fertile lines, is that right? Fertile lines, the same thing like Bangladesh. It could be. My question is regarding the third country. It's about for example, like when we see for the South Korea. Last time it was the same country like Indonesia. It was, but however, South Korea is now is become developed country. So my question is, what is the factor succeeded in pushing them to get out of that cycle? And it could be because of has dysfunctional education has been resolved in Korea, like you mentioned in the beginning also, and or this is because of the colonized mindset. This my question, Mr. Mainheads. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So there was a number of other things that I did want to talk about, but I didn't have as much time. But yes, of course. So there are many factors. As I said, there are so many factors. Culture is one of them. Can we change our culture? That is one of them. And there's also other things. I'll tell you an interesting thing. In Africa, many countries study in French or in English. In Bangladesh, people study in English. In Pakistan, people study in Urdu. Not really. They in the big universities in Pakistan also study in English. If you go to Malaysia, the education is in English, right? If you go to South Korea, the education is in Korean. If you go to China, the education is in Chinese. If you go to Russia, the education is in Russian. If you go to France, the education is in French. If you go to Germany, the education is in German. If you go to Italy, the education is in Italian, right? We are kind of, if you see, who are we copying with this? We are kind of copying Africa, we're copying India, we're copying Pakistan, right? We are not copying this from countries that have developed. Okay? Countries like Korea, if you go to Korea, you have to learn Korean to get good education. Many people in Bangladesh, they get scholarships and go to Korea to study, and they have to learn Korean, right? That's an interesting aspect. Of course, that's one aspect. There's not, the answer is very complex, obviously. It's a question of culture. We have to change the culture, the mindset. We have to develop infrastructure and we have to develop processes by which things happen, which are based on merit and not nepotism, right? We have to have meaningful leadership. We have to have meaningful cohesion in society. We don't have to have violence. If a country like Pakistan, did you know that South Korea, when it was developing, they went to Pakistan, they copied the Pakistani plan in the 1950s. They took the plan, their 5-year plan developed by Pakistan. And at that time, Pakistan was developing faster than China or South Korea, right? And the Chinese and the South Koreans would go to Pakistan to learn are these people developing, right? And then what happened, right? So you can see that they developed and Pakistan did not, right? So we have to figure out what are the things that worked and what are the things that didn't work, not with an ideological lens, but with a rational, logical, and very objective lens. I think that's the beginning. And we have to see these things and you have to not be blind to them, because there are always, in my country at least, there are political elites that make sure that we stay blind to these things. The elite in my country, you can say that we are independent, but we are truly, if you ask me, we are not independent, because the elites in my country, they all educate their children, and a lot of the corrupt elites, they keep all their money in Western countries, right? So according to the United Nations, $1 trillion is every year removed by corruption from the developing country to the developed countries. $1 trillion, right? Where does it go? The people in, I actually belong to one of the elite families, right? So our children, where do they go? They go abroad. Where does our money, illicit money, go? The illicit money of the elites of Bangladesh. They go to bank accounts in UK, Switzerland, Bahamas, right? Panama, right? To Western countries, to USA, all these places. So that is a big drain on our resources. And it is also means that these elites will not change the way things are. They will not have an education system in the local language. They will not have a system, they will not ban the O-level, A-level system that this country is running on, which is a British imported system, which has no historical context for many of the things. The elites are educated in this British system today. And even the other education systems are based on the what the British left here. But the common people, they do not respect themselves because they do not know their true history. History is not properly taught in these countries. So that's another issue. So there are many, many complex issues. I hope that I tried to answer a little bit of your question. Dr. Miss Wan. Right.
Thank you. The other things, most of the company in Indonesia, they want to work together with the university or most of company. Maybe I'm not quite sure whether it is the same in Bangladesh. Maybe this is one of the reason that why our innovation or research is not much developed in our country. So what do you think about that? Why there's not many company who going to work together with the university in doing research?
Okay. Well, I've lived in a number of countries. I've even taught in Pakistan, and I've been to I've even lectured in Malaysia. I've lectured in Brunei. I've taught some things in even USA, right? And one of the interesting things I find, amongst other things, is that, of course, the universities here and in other countries in the third world, they are not producing graduates that are of the quality that that companies need. One. Two, the companies are not providing jobs that are meaningful, because many of the companies in these countries, they are not proper companies. For example, they don't have a strong research and development portion, or many of them don't even manufacture things. Many of them are just agents of, they're multinational companies that are basically have a local subsidiary, but they're basically agents of foreign companies, right? And those foreign companies, they keep their research in their country. They keep their real important manufacturing in their country. Maybe they'll do local assembly of things, but the important things they will miss out, right? So they do not really need the kind of things that a nation needs. Nation needs engineers, scientists who can develop new things, innovate, come up with research. They don't need those things. They just need people who will be yes men, who will say, yeah, okay, I will get sales report. I'll write a sales report. I'm a sales manager. I'm a marketing manager. I'm a head of HR, right? So that's the kind of people they need. And I guess we are trying to give them that kind of people. We're trying to people who will speak their language and make them happy.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the great answer, Dr. Minhaj. Okay, for the next participant who want to ask the question, we have Dr. Andi Nomaseleno. Okay, Dr. Andi Nomaseleno, the floor is yours. We still cannot hear you, Dr. Andino. Dr. Andino? We are sorry, we cannot hear you, Dr. Andino. Can you put the question on the chat box?
Chat box.
Okay, we will wait for Dr. Andino.
Sama-sama. Terima kasih. Oh, let me see, check my phone. Are you messaging me on my phone? No. Okay.
Who do you want to call? Dr. Andino?
He's having trouble.
I'm using my handphone. Now can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Now we can hear you.
Okay. I would like to ask, does colonialism exist today? The form of colonialism today is different from the past.
Interesting question. That's a good question. So he asked, what does, okay, so I think not everybody heard him, but he asked, whoops. Right. So he asked about, does colonization exist today? And
what we generally face like today, the food we eat and the social media technology we use can become a new form of colonialism that we are not aware of, and
sorry,
affect the education and development of children.
I didn't get that.
Okay. Right. I'm sorry, I have to. Okay.
Yes.
Is it okay if I read the question, Dr. Andino? I will help you to read the question.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I just got the first part. I didn't get the second one.
Okay, I will try to read the question from Dr. Andino. The form of colonialism today is different from the past. What we generally face, like today, the food we eat and social media. Technology we use can become a new form of colonialism that we are not aware of and affect the education and development of children. Like eating some food products can turn someone LGBT, and there are many negative effects of social media. Wi-Fi network that can affect the development of a child's brain. With this situation, how people in a third world country can raise their kid to become a scientist?
Yes, that's a very interesting question, because that does bring us with the problem of how do we isolate. At the same time, you cannot isolate if you want to do research or if you want to innovate or you want to create a country that is innovative, right? So that is a very complex problem. And here's my solution to that. The first thing that there has to be is that in the third world countries, we have to have a certain level of control over these platforms, social media platforms, because I have worked in my country. I have worked in the security sector, in the defense sector, in the intelligence sector, right? And what we know is that using WhatsApp, using Facebook, any intelligence agency can get any amount of information about the people of a country. They can also use it to influence them, and they can also use it to manipulate them. Okay, so if we want to be truly not colonized, right, we have to be able to control these things. Because imagine this: any country that has a relationship with these social media platforms, and all these social media platforms sell your information, and in many cases give away that information, not even for money. All these platforms have information about virtually vast majority of people in that country. So they know exactly what is going on in that country. So there are different softwares which are sold to various security services in my country and in other countries like my country, where these softwares allow the security services to basically gather every information about every citizen. So it is, I think, from a colonization point of view, very dangerous for a country to have this kind of information available to foreign powers. Because if they want to manipulate you, if they want to harm you, if they want to find any individual in that country, if they want to do whatever they want, objectives they set, they can use that information against the country. So you see that countries which are actually independent, like China, does not allow Facebook to operate. It does not allow WhatsApp to operate. because these things are actually spying devices. They're not really, they're for free for a reason. They're allowed them to a country to be manipulated by any foreign country which has that information. And that information can be anything. Even if you keep your phone off, if a foreign intelligence service wants that phone to become on and wants to, and you don't know, you think it's off, it can go on and it can record whatever is going on in your room, okay? In terms of audio, even in terms of video, right? And other than this, there's big data. There's databases which have a lot of information and which use artificial intelligence, AI, to manipulate that data, okay? So, and then using that AI, they can do many things and get a great deal of information about your country that you even yourself will never know, okay? Even the leaders in your country may not know, okay? So this, I think that from a colonization perspective, I think that that is a big problem. The other thing is about education, pedagogy, education from a young age and comprehensively. I personally feel that children should not be given a smartphone, right? I personally feel employees of companies in many situations should not be given. I can tell you that when I used to own a business, I know that employees who had a smartphone were far less productive than employees who did not have a smartphone, okay? So, and I think that especially pornography is a big problem. I think that the viewership of pornography is very high, especially among third world countries, and especially amongst Muslim countries, because there is a suppression of sexuality in the sense that in the West, people can just have sex with whoever they want to, right? But in these countries, in countries like Bangladesh, they cannot. So they often find other resources. And that is mainly the internet and pornography. And that has a very detrimental effect to the development of a child, especially, but also to adults. And it is an increasing problem, but nobody wants to talk about it because it's just controversial, okay? So I think that if you see the rankings, there's a ranking of different countries that watch pornography. Amongst the highest are countries in the third world, okay? Countries like, even Indonesia is in the list, Pakistan is in the list, right? In that top 20 consumption of pornography. And that is a big problem for our children. Imagine what it's doing to our minds, because if you study psychology and you study the impact of pornography, it is terrible. It is incredibly bad in its life. It will damage a child for life. So at the same time, you want the child to, get access to the internet, to get access to YouTube and learn things, right? So you have to find a very good balance between that. I personally feel that if I had children, I would definitely not want them to have internet all the time, especially at home. If there would be internet, there should be supervised to some extent, or in a public setting where things that are viewed can be viewed by others. So, so I hope that helps answer part of your answer. The other part is about the nature of colonization. So the nature of colonization today is we're supposedly in a post-colonial world. There is supposedly no colonization. However, I can tell you that if, according to the UN, $1 trillion is leaving the third world to the first world, that is a form of colonization itself. The fact that the US dollar depreciates and all countries use the US dollar and the US as a reserve currency means that all of us are actually paying tax to the United States, okay? So that's a direct form of taxation. So yes, we are colonized, we are still colonized, but the worst thing is that we are mentally colonized. So from a psychological point of view, we are in a state which does not allow us to be free, even if we are not physically being controlled militarily by another country. Okay, I think that was a long answer. But I hope that answered all the segments of your question.
It's a very great answer, Dr. Manhaj. And the last question for Dr. Andino, I will try to read it. University in the third world countries open job vacancy for lecturers, professors from the West. What the West does must be what makes them great. The university in the third world country try to cope the same. Workers from the West get differently salary with the workers from the East, even though sometimes workers from the third world countries have a better education and research track records than the Western worker. Some of these workers, appointed as the deans, heads of department, and below them are local people. In the past, colonial boosts have with the gold, glory, and gospel mission. Western workers today may be also like that. They come get accepted to work on the campuses in the third world countries. They have received the gold and glory. And when they interact and marry with the local residents, they also receive the gospel. Is this hidden colonialism in the field of education in this modern era?
Yes, it is. It's actually the educational institutions. Remember, according to Ibn Khaldun in his book Al-Muqaddimah, he says that 40 years after the end of colonization, you are supposed to be mentally free, right? But even after 40 years, we're now at 70 years, we are not mentally free. It's because the continuation of that colonization through the educational institutions, that is one of the main reasons that this mental colonization is going beyond what Ibn Khaldun in his book Al-Muqaddimah, one of the greatest historians there is, says, right? So that's my take on that. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I studied in America, and I can tell you that many of the third world students that go to America, and you think that they're coming back as in the same level of education as an American, it's not true. When we go there, the vast majority of students from the third world, they just hang out with each other. So Bangladeshis, they will just hang out with each other, eat rice, eat dal, eat fish, and talk in their own language, and just go and pass the exam and take this degree and come home, teach at a university, become a lecturer or a professor, and you will think that this person embodies America. But it's not true, because the Americans don't study in the same way. They have a different approach to studying. They have a different approach to knowledge, and they learn different things. The average Bangladeshi who goes abroad and comes back does not have those qualities, does not have those skills. All he has done is gone there, memorized notes, written answers, and come back, right? So he is not equipped to really bring you what is America, okay? Bring you the real knowledge of America, the real culture of America, the real those things. So that is why when a white person comes to any country, people get very impressed. Firstly, because of colonization, we remember that white people ruled us, so we react to that in that same way. And also because they have something we imagine that we don't have. And we think that by having them in the university, that we will somehow become better. This is true in some ways, but it is not always true. And no nation can actually rise. If you look at history, if you look at Ibn Khaldun, if you look at Malik bin Abi, if you look at many other historians, they all say that a nation cannot really rise by copying another nation, no matter how great they are. That is why South Korea is so great, because South Korea has its own culture. Now South Korea is exporting its culture. They have their own culture. They have their own self-respect. They respect their own language, that they use it for their education. They have innovation, they have industry, right? And China is doing the same. So we have to have that self-respect. Cannot come if your most important professors are from abroad, belong to a different religion, and have different objectives than your culture, your nation, your people, right? So yeah, let me look at does that answer the question a little bit?
Okay, the next participant who want to ask is Bu Bernadita, Bu Indri. Can you open your mic, please?
Ibu Nabila. Okay. Hello, Dr. Minhaj. I would like to say thank you about your explanation about third word. Yeah. Right. Okay. But I still can't get the idea, the journey from the first word to the third word. So the first question is, what are the milestones from the first to third words? And then my second question is, what is the urgency or important thing in the third world business? And the last question, what topics can be adopted by researchers in Indonesia? Thank you, Dr. Minhaj.
You're welcome. So the first question is about first world to third world countries. What are the stages to moving from first world to third world countries, right? Is that correct? Yeah, okay. So, well, as I said, first world country is a political definition. Third world country is a political definition. Second world country is a political definition to start with. In the 1950s, these concepts were come up with because the first world was the Western world, and the second world was considered to be the Soviets and their allies, Soviet Union and their allies. And the third world was considered to be everybody else who is not really part of either of these two blocks, essentially. And so that's how the word third world came about. Okay. But however, in Mao's book, Mao Zedong's book, he talks about the third world in a different way. He defines the third world as countries that are oppressed by the first world. So he includes China as alongside India with that. Although in the first definition, China is part of the second world because they were aligned with the Soviet Union. Now, how can a country from the third world move to the first world? I think the examples are there, like Japan, like South Korea now, more recently. So there are, maybe even Taiwan, right, to some extent. So these are countries that have kind of moved to the first world in real terms. Okay, we can also define them as moving from a developing economy to a developed economy. And for that, the United Nations has various indexes, right? So there is a GDP, okay, question of GDP per capita. There's a question of Human Development Index, HDI, which is a measure created by the United Nations to measure the human development of a country. Okay, so these are, when you rank poorly in these things, you're generally put in the third world bucket, right? And okay, and when you are not part of these, when you do very well in these HDI, for example, Brunei is doing very well in HDI, Brunei Darussalam, right? Country right next to Indonesia, right? And they are now in the HDI and GDP per capita, they are alongside the developed countries. However, amongst economists, they are generally still not considered part of the first world for a different reason. The reason is that they do not have, their wealth is oil and natural gas, right? So they are just living off their natural resources. And that is a problem. Like if we say Saudi Arabia is a developed country because they have high GDP and high HDI, it's not meaningful because they, in terms of industrial development, they are not there. It's just they're selling oil, right? So that is why. All right, so that is why that there is a distinction being made. However, these concepts like third world, developing country, even other terms, first world, HDI, these are all normative concepts. They're not hard and objective concepts. These are often political. And they're normative. They're just things people made up, right? First world, third world, right? And so there is that aspect to it as well. How can we get there fast? If you want, ask me how Indonesia can become a developed country. I would definitely suggest investment in infrastructure and investment in technical education, not in, soft education, right? Not BBA programs. Okay, now the next question was, I'm sorry, if you don't mind, would you repeat that second question you had? I apologize, I forgot.
Okay, and my second question is, what is the urgency or important thing in the third world business?
Third world business, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Very good question. The first thing that a third world country needs to do if they want to industrialize is to develop their steel and coal industry. Okay, so iron ore, you have iron ore, you have coal. You bring them together, you get steel. Okay, so, and every industrial nation today has steel. They make their own steel. Because if you're going to compete on building products like industrial products, then you have to have your own steel. So you need a strong industrial base in terms of your coal and your iron ore. You bring it together, you get a steel industry. Okay, so that's the basic thing that a developing country has to do. Unfortunately, most countries do not do this. Like my country, Bangladesh, is not doing it. It's been 70 years since we were independent, but we are still not. Today is, in fact, the Independence Day of Bangladesh. Okay, Victory Day. Today is Victory Day in Bangladesh. Okay, so, but we still don't have a proper steel industry here. Pakistan, it has all the natural resources in the world. It has high-grade iron ore, it has coal, but because of politics and because of Western countries still influencing Pakistani politics, they still don't have a steel industry. Okay, I used to work for the former Secretary of Agriculture, one of the top civil servants in Pakistan, and I used to be a student of his. And he used to tell me that in the 1960s, they had a plan to develop the steel industry in Pakistan, but it was not allowed by the political authorities. Okay, so yeah, steel is the first and most basic industry for if you want to become an industrial country, if you want to become a developed economy. Secondly, when you have a steel industry, then you have to make investments in developing products and industries which are related to the steel industry. You could have a car industry. You could have, say, other things, ship industry. And I know that Indonesia is now building some ships and it's building some cars, but the critical things in those ships and cars are imported from abroad, like the engines, right? The most important thing are imported from abroad. Countries that cannot build their own engines cannot develop. Okay, so that is another problem. In the third world countries, we see that we will, even if we try to develop it, we will see that they will just, make the outer shell, and then they'll just get from import all the important things like the engine, like the transmission will come from abroad. So what's the use of having a car industry or having anything, so you need to be able to build your own engines. Again, for that, you need good steel industry. So your engines will be competitive. At the same time, you need metallurgy. So that's something that Indonesian universities are not doing very well, metallurgy. Bangladeshi universities barely know anything about metallurgy. And again, countries I've been to, the knowledge of metallurgy is really poor. And I'll give you an example. In America, you can go to meet a random person, go to his house and see that he has a little workshop. And in that workshop, he's doing things. Maybe I've even seen people build their own aeroplane, right? Some people rebuild their engines themselves. Some people, even I've seen people who are making their own metallurgy. They're mixing metals in a hot place, and they're playing with metals. How many people in the third world do that? Nobody does that. Yes, again, the universities don't have the real knowledge of metallurgy because a lot of the knowledge of metallurgy is secret, right? Most countries in the third world, they do not have knowledge of metallurgy, and that metallurgy that is critical. For example, if you want to build an engine, there are critical parts in the engine. They have to be processed in a certain way. The steel has to be processed in a certain way. There has to be certain ingredients put into it. For example, magnesium. Manganese. Manganese is one of the old ways for making Hatfield steel. Very few people know this in the third world. There are other processes. There's processes of tempering steel, quenching steel, various other processes. Other than steel, there's other things like aluminum. How do you temper or manipulate aluminum? How do you use different other things, titanium? And in modern terms, how do you, in today's world, 3D printed parts? How do you build 3D printers? Okay, there are people in America who can build their own 3D printer at home. Okay, but in the third world, there's the entire countries cannot build their own 3D printers. Again, this is the problem. So these industries are critical. Finance, okay, yeah, you need people within finance. BBA graduates, you need them. But where is your metallurgy? Where is your real science? And that's not there. So these things really have to be improved. So I think that's, I hope that answers your second question. If not, I can go on.
Thank you, Dr. Mihaj. Okay.
And the third question was, there was a third question.
My third question is, what topics can be adopted by researchers in Indonesia? But I think you have answered that in the third word.
Okay.
The topic is industry, like natural resources industry, like that.
Oh, well, let me help you with that. Well, what field are you in? What are you studying?
Oh, I'm from mathematics.
Mathematics.
Yes.
Okay, so mathematics is actually very important today, both in the IT sector and for 3D printing even. Because when you build when you're doing the computer aided design work, the CAD work, you need to have very good knowledge of mathematics. And many of these other critical industries but these are very specialized kind of mathematics. Okay. And those specialized kind of mathematics, unfortunately, are not taught in our universities, at least in Bangladesh. Okay. And that is sad. Yes, we teach lots of trigonometry, a lot of other, stuff that will never be used. Okay. Or barely be ever be used. In very advanced mathematics, yes, we are taught, theoretical this, that, but in terms of technical skills of, say, somebody building a 3D shape, using mathematical modeling, those things are very rarely taught, very rarely, if it's taught very rarely. But it cannot be rarely, it has to be more. And you have to be aware of the technologies that are coming up, like 3D printing, and serve that customer, serve that client in terms of teaching that kind of mathematics, right? In terms of other mathematics, I think in terms of basic civil engineering mathematics, that is taught well in the third world, in countries like Indonesia, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan. You get civil engineers that will do the job. They'll build a building, it'll stay up. They'll build a bridge, it'll stay up. But in terms of those critical things, then there's the other kind of mathematics, the mathematics that is critical, some critical industries, as one is shipbuilding, one is IT. Yes. Another critical mathematical industry is aeronautical engineering. So Indonesia has tried to develop its aerospace industry. It is tried to build some things. However, they are not building it organically. They're kind of importing the ideas or importing the factories and trying to build things from there. Aerospace, no industry can be developed inorganically. Okay, you have to develop the base, which means that there have to be a lot of people who are interested in aerospace industry, and they're working on it. And that culture can only be created with government policy and with universities coming together in a meaningful way.
Okay, right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mihaj.
Okay, I think Ibu Indri is the last participant. Is there any participant who want to ask the question? Okay, I think we will move to the next session. Okay, Dr. Minhaj Hussein, I will share the screen because we will give you a certificate.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I will share the screen first.
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. That looks like a very pretty certificate.
Okay. In this session, we will invite Dr. Anino Marcelino as the head of Institute for this IDN to deliver the e-certificate to Dr. Hussein. Okay, still running. Okay.
Okay, I think yeah, I think his mic is not working, so I'll understand that. Yeah, what he said.
Okay. For the next session, we will have a photo session. So all the participants, please open the camera because we want to take a photo session with Dr. Minhaj Hussein. For all the participants, we invite you to open up the camera. We'll take a picture. Okay. For the first page, 1, 2, 3. Okay. For the second page, 1, 2, 3. Okay, for the last page, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So wrap up our webinar, we'll remind again to everyone to fill out the link for the attendance in the chat box. And finally, we are arrived to our last agenda. I'd like to thank all the participants in the session, especially for our outstanding speaker, Dr. Hussein. We hope that today's webinar gives you a lot of insight. I'm Nabila Karmapedi, and I hope to see you at the next webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Hussein.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day. Bye. And we also want to remind everyone in here, if you really want to get to know more information about Institut Bakti Nusantara's webinar, don't forget to follow our Instagram or Facebook, and you can get more information about our next webinar because we will have webinar in the Monday with Bu Indri. So, so everyone, see you in the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Minhaj. Thank you, Ibu Nabila.
Terima kasih kembali.
Thanks, Mr. Andino. Welcome. Bye, Mr. Andino. Bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.